Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Sahana
Sahana
Bhavatu
Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Veeryam Karavavahai Dhanamitamastu Vidvishavahay Om Shanti Shanti.
Om Tat Sat, Om Namah Shivaya. So we had completed the third mantra of the second section. So 2 to 3 we had completed. And in 2 to 3, an example was given of the bow and the arrow. And there were certain comparisons pointed out. So what were those comparisons exactly? Again, a list is being provided in this fourth mantra. 2 to 4, the list is being provided. So we'll read the fourth mantra. Pranavo dhanusharo hyatma
Pranavo Dhanusharo
Tallaksham Brahma Tallaksham Uchyate
Brahmatallakshyamuchyate
Apramattena Vedavyam
Apramattena Vedavyam
Saravattanmayo Mayet Bhavet
Saravattanmayo Bhavet
Saravattanmayo Bhavet.
Saravattanmayo Bhavet.
Okay. So in the last mantra, there was the discussion about the bow and the arrow and the jiva and paramatma and whatnot. So what exactly should be compared to what? That is very specifically laid down here. We already discussed earlier, but this mantra specifically lays it down. So pranavo dhanuhu. Pranava means omkara. And what does omkara represent? It represents the essence of all the Upanishads Shastram. And therefore, the omkara is the bow. So pranavo dhanuhu. Dhanu is a bow. Omkara is the bow. It represents the complete teaching of the entire Upanishads, of the entire Veda, in fact. And after, we must remember, omkara consists of 3 syllables, a, uma. So while pronouncing, of course, you don't say that, you say om. And between one om and the other om, there is a silence. That silence represents the Nirguna Brahman. So the sound, even if it is omkara, the sound has a beginning and an end, right? You say om, it starts, and when you say ma, it ends. And therefore, anything which has a beginning and an end is mithya. And what is there throughout, which is the silence, is satyam. So omkara represents the mithya world. That is, the sound of the omkara represents the mithya world, saguna Brahman. And when it stops, the silence represents the nirguna Brahman, which is satyam. That is pranavo dhanuhu. Then the next one is sharo hi atma. Sharaha is the arrow, and sharaha hi atma. Atma means jivatma. So arrow is the jivatma. We saw this explanation in the previous mantra, but in this mantra it is very specifically being defined. And Shankara gives an example to show what exactly is the jiva. It's a very nice example. He says jala suryadivat. So just as the sun, it enters the water, it gets reflected in the water. And what does it become? It becomes the reflected sun. Jale suryadi. It gets reflected in the water. Just as there is a reflected sun in the water because of the, you can figuratively say, sun entering the water, right? So the sun enters the water and becomes a reflected sun. Similarly, this Easwara, this Paramatma, he enters the body-mind sense complex and becomes the Jivatma, the reflected consciousness. So just as the original sun enters the water and becomes the reflected sun, the original Paramatma, the OC, enters the VMSC, the Sukshma Shariram, and becomes the RC, the Jivatma. And the original sun remains in the water, right? As long as the water is there and the original sun is there, that original sun remains in the water as what? As a reflected sun. Similarly, this Paramatma, which enters the body, mind, sense complex, it remains in the body as the Sakshi. So, we often wonder what is the difference between Paramatma and Sakshi. Remember that it is the Jivatma consciousness, which is the RC, which is called as Sakshi. The word Sakshi strictly cannot be applied to OC. Why? Why can the word Sakshi not be applied to OC?
Because the very word
Some
Sakshi
action,
means
witness,
Sakshi means witness, and therefore
some action is involved.
it cannot.
Yeah.
The witness is seeing, it's performing an action. So
Yeah.
it's doing something, right? So that doing something is not possible for OC because OC is akarta. Okay. So that is the example that Shankara gives to show what is Jivatma. It is the same Paramatma, but it has entered the body and the reflection is now called the Sakshi, the Jivatma. Then the second quarter is Brahma Tal Lakshyam Uchyate. Brahma Tat Lakshyam Uchyate. Tat Lakshyam. So the Tat refers to the arrow, the Jivatma. Lakshyam is the target. Uchyate is said. So Tat Lakshyam Uchyate Brahma. That Brahman is said to be the target of that arrow, the Jivatma. Right? The Jivatma has to hit the target and become one with it. Now remember that you can claim yourself as the body mind sense complex, or you can claim yourself as the RC, the Sakshi. And if you say that you are the Sakshi, basically you are saying what? That I am that witness consciousness which is primarily watching the mind. Okay, like the mind, is the interface through which the Sakshi sees the world. I hope that statement is clear. If you remember Drik Drisha Viveka, there were 3 levels of seers, right? So there is a mind which watches the world, and there is a Sakshi which watches the mind. So this is what is being referred to here. When you say that I am a Sakshi, you are actually saying that I am watching my mind. And of course, you can extend that to say the mind is watching the objects of the world. Okay, so Sakshi, through the mind, through the sense organs, the mind is what? It is the focus point where it is a locus where all the sense organs give their inputs. And therefore, when you say, I am seeing something, your eyes have picked up some form and relayed that to the mind. And you know that because as Sakshi, you are watching what is happening in the mind. The thought in the mind is inert, it is jada. But because of that consciousness principle which you are, it appears to be live. Therefore, you appear to have a live mind because you, the RC, are in contact with the mind. So as long as I'm saying I am Sakshi, remember that when you say I am watching the mind, Sakshi means the one who watches the mind, right? When you say I am watching the mind, you are saying that the mind is separate from me because the seer and the seen cannot be the same. The drik and the drishyam cannot be the same. So as long as you claim yourself as Sakshi, You are saying that I am separate from my mind because I'm watching the mind. But the problem is what? I, the RC, not having come to Jnanam, I take the mind as being a integral part of me. So when I say I am sad, then I have taken the mind as an integral part of me. And this is because I have not learned to be alert. Shastram has not been in my mind, in my ambit. Shastram has not taught me how to be alert. And you can take the example of people who have spectacles sometimes, and they don't know they're wearing spectacles, so they think they have lost the spectacles, but the spectacles are actually on your eyes only. And normally when you look through the eyes, you take the spectacles itself as part of your eyes, especially let us say if you've got contact lenses, or if you've got lenses which are implanted lenses, then they are taken as part of your eyes, right? So that distinction has to be understood. There is the mind which is different from me, but when I take the mind as part of me, then there is a big problem, because it is a sukshma shariram, the mind which travels after death. After death of the physical body, the sukshma shariram, the jiva, travels. And therefore, if you have not learned to separate the mind from you, you will say that after the death of my physical body, I will travel. And therefore, Shastra is saying here, you should learn to separate yourself from the mind. What is the great advantage of separating yourself from the mind? All the emotions, kama, krodha, sukha, dukkha, lobha, everything belongs to the mind. And if I say I am not the mind, I have not only disassociated myself from the mind, I have renounced all the kama, krodha, sukham, dukkham, lobham, everything, because they belong to the mind. And this real nature of being separate from the mind, that is Aksharam Brahman. That is your real nature. And therefore Shankara says, Chara Brahma Tat Lakshyam Uchate. Brahman is said to be the target of the Jivatma arrow. Omkara is the bow. Pranava is the bow. And just as the bow is the reason for the arrow to hit the target. So it's a very beautiful argument. Shankara says, take any bow and the arrow goes and hits the target. What is the main karanam for the arrow hitting the target? It is the bow alone. In that same manner, he says, the Jivatma arrow entering the Brahman target. What is the cause? It is the bow, which is the Omkara, which is the Shastric teaching. And that is not sufficient. This arrow, this Jivatma arrow, Shankara says, will not just enter, because the Jivatma arrow is crooked and it is bent. So Shankara says, using Omkara, using the Shastram, you have to energize, refine, straighten the Jivatma arrow. Two things have to be done. First of all, the arrow has to be straightened, right? Sadhana chatushtayam. And once the arrow is straightened, it's still not sufficient, because the arrow might fly straight, but unless it has got a pointed end, it will not enter the target. And therefore, two things are required. One is the strengthening of that Jivatma with sadhana, the sadhana chatushtayam part of it. And the second is the sharpening part, which is the upasana part of it, focusing your mind. And therefore, now this Jivatma arrow, which has been strengthened, straightened, and sharpened. Now, Omkara, the Shastric teaching, is the instrument, because of which the Jivatma mind is now straight and sharp. And it will enter the Brahman target without any obstacles. And Shankara says, avatishthate. Once having entered, having flown straight, and having pierced the Brahman target, avatishthate, it will remain there. There is no separation afterwards. Because there are no obstacles. So Shankara says it goes without any pratibandha. The arrow flies without any pratibandha, without any obstacles. And Shankara defines this obstacle as only one. He says that this main obstacle, because of which the arrow will not fly straight, the main obstacle is what? The thought that I am the body, mind, sense complex. So when Shankara says apratibandhena, without any obstacles, he says that statement apratibandhena means putting aside the thought, renouncing the thought that I am the body, mind, sense complex. And just like the arrow from the bow hits the target and stays there, providing it is straight and sharp, this Jivatma also, once having hit Brahman and pierced Brahman, it will not be separated from Brahman. And this is the reason he says the bow, that is to say the Omkara bow, is referred to as the bow. That is Pranava is said as Dhanuhu. Omkara is referred to as a bow because of this reason. Okay, so that is the second quarter. The third quarter says Apramattena Vedavyam. Pramada. Pramada is negligence, laziness. Vedavyam here means chanting. Apramattena Vedavyam, of course, refers to Pranava Vedavyam, chanting of Om, employing the teaching. Chanting should be regular and without any laziness. And what is this not being lazy? So Shankara says, pramada, laziness, right? So it's a very beautiful definition of what pramada is. Normally we think pramada means laziness, but Shankara says, bahya vishaya uplabdhihi trishna. The thirst for uplabdhihi, acquisition of bahya vishaya. Trishna is thirst, longing. So the longing for the uplabdhihi, for the acquisition of bahya vishayaha, of external objects, that is called pramada. And if you give that up, then it falls under the definition of apramattena, without negligence, as given in this mantra. So giving up all that, which means what? Indifference to all external objects, and which also means that you have control over all your indriyas, so they don't go wandering around in search of external objects, and you have control over the mind also. So you are having one pointed mind and controlled indriyas. We saw all this in Tattvabodha also. This is basically what is meant by sadhana chatushtaya. So Shankara's commentary very clearly says that whatever are external factors, extrovertedness of the mind and indriyas, those are the obstacles in the journey. And if you want to complete the journey, your priority should be very, very clear. There should be only Brahman as the focus of your mind. Brahman must be the only target. And if other targets are there, what other targets? Health, wealth, wife, children, worldly success. If there are any other targets, then Shankara says definitely the Jivatma arrow will deviate from its path and it will not hit the Brahman target, but it will hit those other targets. And therefore, apramata here is, remember, when I say that there are other targets and the arrow will miss Brahman, if other targets are there, it is very easy to come to the conclusion of one should avoid any other sense objects. Is it not so? When I say that any other external object should not be your target, what is the understanding? Understanding is that you should avoid all external objects. Now that is a big trap. Why? The statement avoid external objects, which is a very common understanding in Shastram, that you should withdraw your mind from external objects and focus only on Brahman. But when you say avoid external objects, it's a huge trap. What is that? Why is it a trap?
In
Because-
Vyavahara, sorry, go on, Rituji, please carry on. Yeah.
Rituji, please carry on. Yeah.
Ji, Acharya ji, so I thought avoiding would by itself would still mean that there is something else.
Yes. Avoiding means, first of all, you're focusing on that thing which you're trying to avoid. That itself is a trap because you have taken it for granted that there is something else. And if you remember Drigdrasya Viveka, yatra yatra mano yati, tatra tatra samadhaya. Shankara says this statement, yatra yatra mano yati, tatra tatra samadhaya, is the essence of saying that where Brahman must be the only target. So yatra yatra mano yati, wherever the mind goes, tatra tatra samadhaya, may you see only Brahman. Right? So you don't have to avoid your parents, you don't have to avoid your children, you don't have to avoid your spouses. Learn to see the essential part of all these entities, which is what? Atma only. Every entity, every Jivatma is Atma plus Anatma. We are trained to focus on the Atma, Anatma portion. But yatra yatra manoyati, tatra tatra samadhayaha. That's a very beautiful statement. It's talking about meditation. Normally, what do we say? Whenever you meditate, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, withdraw your mind from other objects, focus on Brahman only. But this yatra yatra manoyati is one step further. It says, do not think of any object as a distraction. Because any distraction will always be there. The more you try to take your mind away from the distraction, somewhere you are going to get stuck in that particular trap. The only real way is to be able to see that there are really no distractions at all. And how is that possible? Samadhayaha. Samadhi here means seeing Brahman. Therefore, yatra mano yati, wherever the mind wanders to, tatra tatra, Brahman is there. Where is the question of any distraction? Because you're trying to focus on Brahman. And a distraction will be a focus on a non-Brahman entity. But if you are able to see everything as Brahman, where is the question of saying there is a distraction? So here, of course, we have to see everything as Om. Om is representing Brahman here. It is in the sense of seeing everything as Om. And therefore, having understood that everything is Om, he says, Sharavat Tanmayo Bhavet. May you become one with Brahman. Charavat, with that arrow, just as the arrow becomes one with its target, Tanmaya. Tanmaya means identified with, merged with. And therefore, Tanmaya Bhavet means may you merge with Brahman. May you become a Brahmanishtha. May you be established in Brahman. Very beautiful little mantra. Now we'll read the next mantra, 225. Yasmin dhyau prithivishchantiriksham
Yasmin
ह्यौ पृथिवी चान्तरिक्षम्
otam manah saha pranaischa sarvaihi
ॐ मनस्तः प्राणैश्च सर्वैः
tamevaikam janatha atmanam
जानत आत्मानं
Anya vacho vimunchatha amritasyesh setuh.
अन्यवाचो विमुञ्चतामृतस्यैष सेतुः
Vimunchatha amritasyesh setuh.
विमुञ्चतामृतस्यैष सेतुः.
Okay, so I'll just again mute you all so that there's no disturbance. Right. So Yasmin. Yasmin mean in whom. Dhau. Dhau is heaven. Prithvi is earth. Antariksham is the intermediate space. Otam is interwoven. Manaha saha pranascha sarvaihi. Mind and prana of all. Tameva eka janatham. Know that. Know him as the one. Atman. Anyavachaha. Any other discussions. Vimunchatha. Give up. Because this knowledge, Amritasya Esha Setuhu, is the bridge. Setuhu is bridge to immortality. Okay. So here we should recall the 5 aspects of consciousness, which we have again and again and again talked about. Do you remember? What are they? First one is, I am of the nature of consciousness. Second one is, okay, these are not the not a part property of the body, right? This again, we have discussed this also earlier. I am of the nature of consciousness because we are talking about me, right? So I am of the nature of consciousness. Then, and therefore, I, the consciousness principle, I, the Atma, am the only source of permanent peace and happiness. Okay. Then, by my mere presence as Atma, what happens? Life is given to the material body. Through this material body, what do? I experience the material world. But even while experiencing the material world, I, the Atma, am not affected by any happening, any events, either in the material body or the material world. Remember that the material body is affected by the happenings. The material world is affected by happenings. But I, the Atma, though I experience all these events through the medium of the material body, I, the Atma, am not affected by any of these happenings. And the last and most important thing is, this is my real nature. Nature of consciousness, only source of permanent peace and happiness, giving life to the body, and even while experiencing the body and the world, not being affected by the events. This is my basic nature. Now, the last one, most important part is, if I forget my real nature, what happens? Life becomes a burden for me. But if I remember my real nature, life becomes an entertainment for me. It becomes a blessing for me. So this you must remember, these are the something to be internalized. I am consciousness principle alone. I am the only source of permanent peace and happiness. It is because of me that material bodies get life. I use that material body to experience the material world. However, whatever happens to the world or the body does not affect me, the Atma. And this is my real nature. If I forget that nature, life becomes a burden. If I remember that nature, life becomes a leela, entertainment. This you must use for your nididhyasana. From now on, from this point onwards, every mantra is a very, very important mantra. It's a Mahavakyam, you can say. So, what have we studied? If Atma is the cause, the Karanam, and the Jagat, the universe is the Karyam, where is Atma available? Wherever the Karyam is there. Remember, Karanam is always available. Where will you go to find the gold? Whichever ornament you go to, the gold must definitely be there. Right? So if you want to find the Atma, don't go looking for the Atma. What should you look at?
Yourself.
Yatra yatra mano yati tatra
Every
tatra.
sarvam.
Yes.
Hmm.
But remember that you should look at the world because that is all that you can look at. Where you look at when you open your eyes, it is Atma alone. You only have to learn to recognize that what I see is Atma. That's why I said, when you open your eyes and see your spouse, don't think of it as the person who nags me. You say, that is Brahman that I am seeing, non-different from myself. When you see the neighbor's child irritating you, that is Brahman alone. That is the vision. Yatra yatra manoyati, tatra tatra samadaya. So wherever the ornament is there, the gold has to be there. And this is what is being said here. Yasmin, in that Atma alone. Yasmin means in this alone. In this me refers to Atma. In that Atma alone, Dhyav is the heavens, Swarga. Prithvi is the earth. Cha Antariksham. Antariksham is the inner space, the space between, intermediate space. So heaven, earth, and intermediate space. Very simply. Okay, all the lokas, all three lokas are what? Otam. Otam means woven into. So if you've seen a loom, in which cloth is woven, you will find that there is the loom goes this way, another loom goes this way. So there is a long thread and there's a cross thread. So the cross thread is called prota, and the long thread is called ota. In English, I think it's called warp and woof or warp and weft. So one this way, one at 90 degrees to that. Otam is the one which is the long thread. And the analogy, the example is a very good one. Right? Why? He says everything is woven into what? Into that Atma alone. Now you look at a cloth. Okay, you look at your t-shirt, for example. My t-shirt is very plain, but some of you may have shirts which have got embroidery on it. Designs of birds, feathers, etc. Right? You can look at it, right? You think that I've got a t-shirt or a shirt or a blouse or a dress with a lot of designs. But what would you do supposing one thread is loose and you start pulling the thread of that cloth? What happens ultimately? You start keeping on pulling the thread. What happens to your dress?
Gets unwoven.
You
It
find
just
there is no dress.
Yeah, it just comes out.
What you are left is with the thread alone. And therefore, Otam here means Samarpitam. Shankara says Otam has to be taken as Samarpitam, supported. And again, supported, you have to take a very careful meaning, because when you say the thread supports the cloth, you do not understand it as two different entities, the thread and the cloth. The cloth has no existence of its own apart from your dress. In other words, the cloth's existence is dependent on the thread. In other words, the cloth is what?
The upadana karanam. The thread is the upadana karanam.
Cloth is mithya.
Cloth is mithya.
Right.
Because it doesn't have an existence of its own. Right? And therefore, this samarpitam, supporting, has to be taken as kalpitam support, imaginary support, because the universe the three entities mentioned here, Dhau, Prithvi, and Antariksham, they don't have existence of their own. They are dependent upon the Atma only. Therefore, Yasmin, in this Atma, they are Otam. They are as if supported because they are Mithya. Okay. Now, how to discover the Atma? How do I look for the Atma, which is everywhere, right? The Karanam will never change. And when something doesn't change and is there everywhere, we often miss it, like space. We miss the space. And therefore, it is easier to look for something which is changing. Changeless things, formless, changeless, all-pervading entities are difficult to look for and to understand. It's far easier to look for something which is everywhere and which undergoes change. But when I look at those things which undergo change, I should, have a basic understanding that everything which is changeless, which is changing, has a beginning, has an end, and therefore is not Satyam. But that changing entity needs the Otam, needs the support of the changeless entity, which we call the isness principle, the Atma. And therefore, wherever I look at anything, for example, let us say, I am looking at a AC remote. What do I say? There is a remote, right? All right. I look at a phone. I say there is a cell phone. I say there is a flower. There is a glass. There is water in the glass, right? What is common to all this? The isness is common. The isness is something which you are experiencing because you are saying there is. That isness, isness. I don't know if there's a word like that. Okay, the isness is the abstract noun. I suppose it's the abstract noun of is, indicating the state of being, state of existing. So that isness, the word isness which I'm using, it is the existence of the mobile, the existence of the remote, the existence of the flower, existence of the glass. That existence is being experienced by me, and therefore I say is. Right? So that is common everywhere. That existence is common everywhere. The flower has a shape and a smell. The remote has a shape. The phone has a shape. But the existence, the isness, the common entity everywhere, it has got no form, it has got no smell, it has got no shape, no attributes at all. The only thing is, it belongs to every entity. No entity can exist without the existence. That common, you can't call it attribute, that common thing which is there everywhere, the common thread you can say, is existence, Sat, the Atma. Right? So the first, there was the Atma, there was Brahman. Then there came a Rupa, a form, which was what? In terms of Bodha, what was the first form which came?
First one.
Sorry?
Akasha.
Akash. First form was Akasha. So that first form came and there was a name given to it, Akasha. Then came Vayu, then Agni and so on. Therefore, the first form, Akasha, plus the isness, that is existence, you refer to as Akasha is there. So Vayu form with the existence becomes Vayu is there. The Agni form with the existence, Agni is there. Prithvi form with the existence, Prithvi is there. Man form, man is there. Woman form, woman is there. The entire Srishti is born in this manner. And then what happens? At the end of the Srishti, Pralayam, what we call the destruction of the universe, what is there? Nothing is there. Right? What is common between saying this is the bird, that's the animal, that's the man? When everything has disappeared, you say nothing is there. What is common?
Is this still there?
Is still there. The existence principle is still there. Where you see something, existence principle is. Where you don't see something, nothing is. Existence principle still is. That Atma is the all-pervading existence. Whatever you see is nothing but a form and a name superimposed upon the isness, the existence principle. So if you want to know what that isness is, what do you need to do? Any object is object plus existence. Object is Nama Rupa. So any object is Nama Rupa plus existence. Because you're saying object exists. If you want to know what that existence principle is, what do? You simply close your eyes, close the indriyas, withdraw the mind, remove the Nama Rupa. When from Nama Rupa plus existence, which means Nama Rupa plus Atma, you remove Nama Rupa, what you are left with is only existence, pure Atma. Now, can I see this thing? How come? When I have removed all the Nama Rupa, how come I don't experience or see this pure existence? Because pure existence is not the object. Object is Nama Rupa. You have removed all the objects. And therefore, there are only two things in this world, the Drik and the Drishyam, the seer and the seen. All the objects are classified under the head of seen. When you have removed the Nama Rupa, you have removed all the scenes. What is left behind? Only the seer is left behind. I, the Sakshi Chaitanyam, am left behind. So what you don't experience, but because of which you know that you are not experiencing anything, that is Sakshi Chaitanyam. That is you alone. Right? So therefore, the equation is pure existence is equal to pure consciousness is equal to I is equal to Karanam of the universe. The Jagat Karanam I, Ishvara. Am pure existence plus pure consciousness. Not the I identified with the body, but the I, the Chaitanyam, from which the whole universe is born. Remember, in Sushupti Avastha, you are not identified with the body. Even though your bodily function is there, your prana functions, your blood runs, your breathing, those functions are there. In Tattva terms, we say the pranamaya kosha is still functioning. Even though pranamaya kosha functions, you are not identified with it. It is an autonomic function. You are not identified with the body-mind sense complex. And therefore, in Sushupti Avastha, you are existing, but devoid of any identification with the body-mind sense complex. You are existing as pure Sakshi, as pure consciousness. And when you come to Jagrata Avastha, then of course, Maya Shakti is involved. When you come to Swapna Avastha, Nidra Shakti is involved. And therefore, the whole creation we are talking about. Remember earlier, Earlier mantras, we talked about the entire universe, Samashti. Samashti discussion was there. But now the mantra says, Manaha Saha Pranaha Sarvaihi. Interwoven along with the prana is the mind, Manaha Saha. Sarvahi, of all. The mind and prana are necessary to experience the world. Without prana, you won't be alive anyway. You need the mind. But the mind cannot experience the world directly. It needs the indriyas. And therefore, mind, prana, and indriyas are necessary to experience the jagat. He says these three, they are also Uttam. They are also woven along with the same Brahman. Therefore, everything that you have, the body, the mind, and the universe also, they are nothing but Brahman alone. Tam eva ekam atmanam janataha. Therefore, know that Paramatma alone as Atma. Remember, whenever we say Atma, in Sanskrit, Atma means I. So when I say tameva ekam janataha, that one Parameshwara alone, Atmanam janataha, know as yourself. And ekam means non-dual self. Know that that Ishvara is nothing other than your own ekam, your own non-dual self. And therefore, this statement, as I said before, is a Mahavakyam. Why? Because whenever I am using the words Paramatma and Jivatma, I am saying Paramatma is different from me. Once I discover the oneness, the Aikyam, then I don't need the prefixes Parama and Jiva. I use only Atma. And that Atma, Tameva Janataha, you should know. Why should you know? Because in the beginning you said, knowing, tell me, knowing that, by which everything will be known. You asked. And therefore, this alone is that knowledge. And therefore only, Anyaha Vachau Vimunchataha. May you give up all other teachings except in this primary teaching, Tattvamasi Aham Brahma Asmi. Only you should remember, that only teaching should be there for you. All other teachings, Anya Vachau Vimunchataha, you should give up. So having understood the Atma as your real nature, renounce all other Shastras, because all other Shastras are in the nature of Aparavidya. And not only that, if any Shastra, all Shastras prescribe karma, right? Adhana. So if you are renouncing any Shastra, Shankara says, along with those Shastras, you should also renounce all sadhanas revealed by that Aparavidya Shastra. Aparavidya has done its work, right? Because having come to Jnanam, it's not that Aparavidya you didn't use. You used the entire Karma Kanda. So here he's saying renounce all the Karma Kanda. Not because it was not useful. It was useful for you to get Chitta Shuddhi, to come to Jnana Yogyata. But now having entered Jnana Kandam, all those sadhanas are no longer relevant for you because that Aparavidya has done its work. The work is over. You have completed Paravidya. You have come to Paravidya. Aparavidya's work is complete. Right? And therefore, when one gives up a karma, you should also give up all sadhana necessary to perform that karma. So here Shankara is saying that dharmartha kama purusharthas have to be absorbed into moksha purushartha. Just as, when someone takes sannyasa, one gives up the Gayatri mantra and starts with the Om, Omkara. Therefore, the Gayatri mantra is absorbed by the Om. Similarly, the moksha purushartha should absorb Dharmartha kama purushartha. And the Upanishad says, Amritaha asya eshaha sedhu. This alone, eshaha means what? This Atma Jnanam, which is Tattvamasi, eshaha Atma Jnanam alone is the setuhu, the bridge to where? Amritasya, to immortality. Shankara, of course, adds one word very carefully. Setuhu eva. The eva is not there in the Moolam, in the original mantra, eva is not there. Shankara adds the word eva to say that this is not a real bridge. It's as if bridge. This Atma alone is as if bridge. And that bridge is the only place to cross where it will take you across the ocean of samsara. So this is what is the the symbolism in Ramayana, where Vali was chased by Sugriva everywhere. Okay, but sorry, other way around. Sugriva was chased by Vali everywhere, but there was a curse which Vali had. What was that? Vali had a curse.
The power gets reduced, or he gets the power of
No,
something like
you
that.
guys should read Ramayana.
The
Okay.
boon.
Yeah.
That was the boon.
He will get the power of the opponent.
No, that's okay. That's part of it.
Yeah.
But Vali had a curse. The curse was that he could not enter a particular mountain.
Mountain, yes.
Okay, I forget the name of the mountain, but that particular example, that particular story is not just a story. It's got a very interesting teaching for all of us. That all of you are Sugrivas. All of us are Sugrivas being chased by Vali. Who is Vali? Vali is karma. Wherever you go, karma will come. But there is one place where it cannot enter, and that is the Atma. The meditation on Om is the only solution to being chased by Vali karma. Vali is first name, karma is second name, whichever. That Vali karma will chase you everywhere. But once you meditate on the Atma, once you've entered the Atma, that Atma is out of bounds for karma. Karma cannot chase you there. And therefore, meditate upon Om. With this, we'll stop for the day. Any questions?
Acharya ji, so when we say meditate upon Om, that includes the silence matra part of it as well?
Yes. When you meditate upon Om, remember the represents the Thula Prapancha, gross universe. U represents the subtle universe. Ma represents the causal universe. And therefore, when you meditate upon Om, all the three universes should be meditated upon. And when you stop the Om, in the silence, you should remember that the support for all this, Otam, support for all this is what? Is Nirguna Brahman alone. That is Om meditation actually, not just chanting. So we'll do that in great detail in much later. Mundaka Upanishad.
Okay.
Om Acharya ji. In
Yeah.
this, the term setu, when we are saying, so the setu term implies to what? This portion of dhyanam, this the teaching aspect of it, the Nidhi
Setu
Dhyan.
is the bridge. The Om is the Setu. The Om represents the entire teaching. The entire teaching is compressed into one word, Tattvamasi. Only if you know that you are Brahman, then only can you cross samsara. Without that, samsara will be there everywhere.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for your patience. With this, we'll stop. Om Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat, Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your
Om
listening.
Namah